Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks from wherever you're joining. This is the pre-launch party for the book Uncertainty, and we're glad you're here. We'll be repeating this later today, and it's great to see Heather from Geneva as folks are continuing to join. Basir, welcome, Jonathan. Uh, we have been, all of us, laboring with quite a bit of pleasure as we consider all the details of how to help folks tackle uncertainty. And it's been quite a journey. As I've been leading the pack on the regular cadence of working through things, I made a new slide deck every week for the editorial team. And even if I didn't share much of it, it was kind of my records of where we are, where we're going. And I'm on week 35 now. So for 35 weeks, we've been chugging our way through the idea of putting this playbook together, and we are here. We now have a book, and it is quite an extraordinary, I believe, piece of intelligence for the modern era. So again, thanks for joining today. We're here to really just celebrate that it's done. We could talk about some of the details and particulars ahead of our launch party. But in this pre-launch party, we just wanted to kind of bring everybody into the same understanding of where we are, when things will be happening is still something we're working on precision, but I think we've got a lot of that laid out. Sean, did you want me to go ahead and lay out some of the upcoming events that we do have in the guild at this point, or come back to that?
There you go.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. So our intent at the moment is we will have the launch on the website coming up here on the 15th to let folks know that we have our podcast as part of the wild cards, the ongoing conversation now live and available. You'll be able to read all about the book, many of the details that we're sharing here today from the website. Then our intent with our pre-publisher and our publisher is that we'll have this out and downloadable and able to be accessed, and you can have a copy on the 24th. We will use the 25th, the day of the Swan, as a launching pad to get the word out, and that'll take place on the 25th. So then we are setting up the schedule now for launch events on June 6th and June 8th. Some of the reason that we would delay that a part of a week or more is we get the Memorial Day holiday, a lot of vacations for folks. And at that point, we'll be in great shape to have a well-prepared launch and build up some energy for purchases in that time frame that'll help us on the top 10 list. Then finally, we'll hit this again. The timing's going to be great because we have the day of the 1,000-day radar futures event comes up for the guild on June 19th. So really a good solid month of opportunity to get the word out and get this in people's hands. So that's what's on the radar for now. And I think we want to go ahead and just roll through some of the things we prepared to share with everyone about the book, how we got here, why, and I think next is why. And is that mine as well, Sean? Sorry.
Yeah, why don't you just I mean, you've been leading us for the last 35
Okay.
weeks. Any kind of key learnings from the Sermon on the Mount?
Well, key learnings from executing on the production, or key learnings from the book?
Wherever you want to go, Gordon.
Okay. Well, hey, one of the things I learned is how very difficult it is to coordinate the work of 50 people from around the world who are only tied together by ideas. And so that's been a real challenge that has been actually quite rewarding because of the nature of who all of us are. I'll say, what a great group of people to work with. But nonetheless, our individual performances have been wonderful, but our individual responsibilities and availabilities are all different. And so it was the commitment that really brought this to the fore, the commitment of everyone to make it the best it could be. I would say, in particular, I spent so much time, obviously, with the editing crew that we've had to just really break this down into small bits, decompose a lot of things to put them back together. But in the end, I think the key learning is that we have a really highly collaborative group, a group with tremendous ideas. I'll give just a personal example. Oftentimes in my work, I'll ask for an idea. I'll throw out a nice question that says, how should we do this? I may get one idea, and it might be mine because there's silence sometimes. With this group, if we ask for an idea how to do something, we get probably 3 or 4 really good ideas, and we really have to kind of sharpen our pencil to decide, all right, how are we actually going to do this? What's the best idea for what we're doing now? Because there's none of them bad, none of them wrong. It's just what's going to work. So I think that's been a learning for me, is just the breadth of knowledge, experience, and capability we have. And then finally, I'll say, I think we learned we can do this. This idea of Cygnus Publishing can and will live on. And whether it's us just doing a really good job of Medium posts on our website or producing additional webinars, podcasts, what have you, additional books, we've got the wherewithal to do this. And I think a final learning would be, we would probably pare it down to fewer people to participate next time, so that it's not as so much an all-encompassing life event for some of us. But again, what a joy to get to this point where we have something to share. What else should I share there, Sean? I know you've thought about some of the key outcomes we want for some of these moments during the before we get ready for lots of conversation.
No, I
Anything
think you've captured it. I think this,
All right.
if you're in this discussion, you're probably either from our group of contributors, from our Cygnus Sprints group, or from the Gray Swan Guild, some of the valued members that are kind of in our front row. So we wanted to get out to you folks before we got out to everybody else, and hopefully celebrate, tell you a little bit about what it's about, involve you in some of the stuff that's still open and available, and what's next. And then hopefully do some interaction. So that's what we're going to do, I think. Why don't I handle the why uncertainty? So it was funny. One of our colleagues, John, came up with the idea of this as a title. And I think from the moment he said it, all of us kind of, we argued about a lot of different things in terms of, structure and layout and format and flow. But the one thing I think we gravitated to right away was the fact, God, this seems like a fresh kind of idea. There's not too many books I've seen out there on specifically uncertainty. As we learn more, there's some dated notions about uncertainty. There's this feeling of, do you embrace it or do you run away from it? I think all of us have this feeling depending on where we are. And we thought it was a really good theme to actually have the wealth of all of our guild and Cygnus principles that have all these different interests to come under one roof and talk about uncertainty. And the interesting thing, as I looked at some stats, ever since 1942, and I'm not too sure if it was World War II or some of the stuff that was going around the war, but ever since that point in time, Google suggests that uncertainty has been on a constant rise in terms of our interest, our scholarly study on it, and our hopefully professional intent in terms of to navigate through it and get beyond it. So that's why uncertainty, sometimes the best laid plans are always a challenge, but we'd love to do an uncertainty poll. But I would just maybe do this as a chat mechanism. Just if you think about your own relationship to uncertainty, what type of environment do you like to work in uncertainty wise? Is it, you like it very uncertain, somewhat uncertain, somewhat certain, or very uncertain? If you want to just type those into the chat, we'll get a readout. Aaron, my hope is you can just provide some take in terms of what we're seeing. So as we're doing that poll, we have a challenge to you. And I know most of you, many of you are very well read and literate. I've been actually going down the road of identifying the top 25, 26 authors by the alphabet in terms of our favorite authors that speak about some aspect of uncertainty. And it's really interesting. You get to letters like G and K in terms of last names, and it's really, really challenging. So if you could, put your favorite book that you've read, notwithstanding ours, about uncertainty in the chat. We'll add them into the mix and build up a collection of our bookshelf of uncertainty. We certainly are standing on the shoulders of some giants. So if you could do that, that'd be great as well. Deb, if you're okay, I'd love for you to just provide a bit of a sense in terms of our approach to the book.
John, did you want to do the poll or later?
The poll, I've just asked people to write in chat. I'm not too sure if we've got quorum yet, Aaron. I figured you could.
So not surprisingly, with this audience, a lot of people feel pretty comfortable with uncertainty, different degrees. Some people, I think, are overly optimistic, maybe, with how much they like chaos and uncertainty. Depends if it impacts them personally or just their organizations. But I think more so than in the context always, right? But for the most part with this group, it seems like we're a lot more comfortable with uncertainty than probably the traditional audience.
That probably makes sense. We found almost a community of each other, right? I think there's a much larger group of people out there that probably aren't very comfortable with uncertainty, but yeah, which makes it all the more interesting that we've gathered together to write a book. Keep writing whatever your favorite authors is. My hope is we'll pivot to some of the reasons why and some of the construct of the book. Deb Demoff has been the editor on at least 2 chapters. I think you've authored at least 2 articles in the book. You've probably got a really good vantage point in terms of our approach to how we've written the book and why it's a little bit different. You want to share a little bit of your own thoughts on that, Deb?
Sure. Thanks, Sean. Well, I guess we took on the approach that we wanted to poke the bear of uncertainty because it's kind of growling and grizzling and clawing up the world a lot these days. So we came together with this collective group, as you can see, a global collective of leaders and people that are in the business of driving change. And I see some of the awesome authors and thought leaders on the chat here as well. Our hope was to provide a catalyst, maybe some sparks of inspiration, and most definitely a kit bag that would be usable and reusable of practical applications to deal with tomorrow's reality of who knows what's next. So we brought together big thoughts, big thinkers, and hopefully a little bit of an iOS of practicality and different apps that you could access to really figure out how to deal with uncertain issues in your future. We hope that you experience this book as a bit of a delicious groaning board buffet of, there could be full meals, there could be tidbits, you could start with dessert if you want. Any chapter can stand on its own. You can start at the end, go anywhere, and pick it up frequently as a reference, and certainly tell all your friends about it. So that was our approach, and working with a global collective is something that we will all write about in our future as well. And Gordon will write about editing as a democracy. There you go. Thank you, Sean.
And I thought Olga, who's been this joy and discovery of kind of finding you through this book, I wonder if you could just cover off who this book is for.
Yeah, definitely. So the way that I like to explain this book to the people that I talk to about it is, if you imagine your organization is sitting on a platform, and underneath that platform is everything that you need to deal with when you are trying to create something, either a service or a product. And if you're standing on this platform, that platform is going to be super wobbly. It's just going to be moving around all the time. And the reason why that is because everything underneath it is moving, and everything underneath it is your technology, it's your people, it's your marketplace. Everything is moving just wobbly all the time. So this book is for everyone who's sitting on top of that platform trying to make something. It encompasses everything from the people in your organization who are trying to figure out how to make things work inside the organization, but also what should we make in order for us to be successful and to be well set up in the future. So it really does touch upon a lot of the things that everyone in the organization needs to think about and needs to work through in order to do better. I hope that is a good explanation. And it's so far it's worked in terms of all of the people that I talk to, because their question is always, what if it's someone who is maybe an engineer? And I always say yes, because that person is also sitting on that platform trying to make something.
I love it. And just showing the 11 chapters that we have here. The book has come in at an impressive 390 pages, and it's from no shortage of different insight. And I think both Olga and Deb, you've represented well the fact that, yep, you can read it front to back, or you can probably dip into a place that you think you probably need some help at the point that you have it. Here are all the different contributors. Some of you have joined us today early. Thank you. So many of you have given so freely of your time, and I've had the joy of reading this book about 3 or 4 times. I know, Gordon, you've probably done that same amount as well. It's really good. I think the 1 + 1 = 3 certainly turns into something that is really good upon full reading. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts, Gordon.
Now, the thing that strikes me is you read things that put into words feelings and thoughts you've had for years, that it's like, how did I have not met this author or heard this interpretation of it, because it nails it. And then the other thing is just you learn new things. That what a great approach to thinking about this or thinking about that. And so even reading it and rereading it, I learned every time, and had great appreciation for the strength of the authors as I went through it. So what a joy to just soak yourself in this. And my hope is our readers will do the same.
I love it. Now, the genesis of the book is just as interesting as what we've produced. I think, Aaron, I don't know if you want to talk about the 3 different kind of parties involved in this production and how they've all come together to create this great bouillabaisse of a production.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think there's some people that are new to Gray Swan Guild in particular, and there's always so much going on that it's hard for people to get their arms around. Well, what is this thing we call the Guild? And then you talk about Cygnus Sprints, and now you're talking about Cygnus Publishing, and how are they all kind of interconnected, and what do they mean? So as you guys know, that Rob and Sean, the founders of the Gray Swan Guild, created this really think tank, which has become kind of sort of evolved into also a do tank, with a lot of smart people from all over the world, over 8,000 people that get together, various forums to communicate, learn from each other, to share knowledge, publish great material. And that has kind of evolved into this more of a for-profit organization, consulting on demand model called Cygnus Sprints. And several of us from Cygnus Sprints decided, well, we kind of needed a playbook or some type of operating manual, if you will, to put down on paper that could help us to create consistent services and offerings to clients that they may want to pay for our services. So from that kind of evolved into the Cygnus Publishing, and we said, well, let's create a book. And how do we create a book? Is it really our operating manual, or is it just a collection of interesting articles? And we kind of bounced around and evolved. And I think the final product being the book Uncertainty that we're talking about today, that fits within this new Cygnus Publishing venture, is really kind of a hybrid or a combination of those things. Now with Cygnus Publishing, we're hoping that we could create an additional addition to the book, future books. So there's just a lot that could fit under that umbrella, which is really exciting. Like my colleagues mentioned previously, there's a tremendous amount that we've learned in this process and a lot of growing pains that I think will make the future evolutions so much better. But kind of tangentially related within this too are some other things, such as the podcast related to this, another way to get our brand out there and people to get to know us and what we're about and how we differentiate ourselves. And even, you know, the Speakers Bureau, you know, it fits within this for-profit arm of Cygnus Sprints, and all these things are neatly tied together and support one another depending on what clients, customers, people want and what they're in demand for. We have a lot of different ways that we could help them. So I'll pause there. I could probably go on and on, Sean, but is that all right?
Yeah, no, it's great. And I know you're gonna kind of handle our audience intake and anything that's happening on chat throughout. So hopefully you can be our meteorologist in terms of our uncertainty this one. We think we also have a good look and feel. I know it's from there's no nepotism involved here, or maybe there is, but Gordon's daughter Emra has done a lot of the branding on the books. Really, really good. Here's what it looks like in context. Gordon, I'm not too sure if Emma's here today. I think she has a regular gig, but do you want to mention just in terms of what got created here?
Yeah, thanks. When I asked the editorial group, does anybody know anyone who can do the graphics and the layout? That's when I did get crickets. And it may be that some of you are also skilled in that, but we just didn't know or didn't connect on that. But I said, well, my daughter could do this, and she's a guild member. She might want to, she might not. I'll see what I can do. And as it turned out, she said, I'd love to do that. So we pulled her in to help us make sense of the visuals and the graphics. And we had, as an editorial group, worked for a long time on ideas, and again, had tons of input about what the cover should be. At some point, we got enough ideas. We turned those over to Emma, and she created the final graphics for the cover, the spine, et cetera, that you've seen with the lavender background. But beyond that, she's also contributed strongly to helping me lay out the framework of the inside of the book. And these chapter headers that you see that are multicolored, one for each chapter, that was her genesis. And the Cygnus Publishing logo with the swan who has 3 quills as its tail, as its back feathers. Yeah, if you switch that was nobody prompted her to do that, but that's what where that came from. So she's got a real talent for that professionally, and so I was thrilled to have her pulled in. She has taken some of your rough graphics that are inside the book as well and recreated those. Some because the image we had wasn't adequate for printing, and hopefully we've faithfully recreated those. Others that are copyrighted and easily read and high quality, we've left alone. And then we have some that are sort of in between that we're still trying to figure out what to do before we hit the final print button. So that's been her effort, and really grateful to her to be able to participate and to share her talents and time.
It's amazing. It looks great. I know in this, we don't want the entire session to be just a download of what we've did. We want to involve you in this this point as well. But we've asked the editors just to provide 1 or 2 minutes in terms of what each one of their chapters is about. There's 11 in the book, and we've got, I think, most of the editors here. We'll probably have to fill in for a couple people that might be showing up to our nighttime session. I was entrusted to write the front of the book with some collaboration with a number of other folks here. So kind of an introduction to uncertainty, providing some historical reference points, some theoretical reference points. But really, one of the biggest things was, you know, how do we look at uncertainty through 2023 lenses? And there used to be a term called VUCA, or I guess there still is. It was invented about 35 to 40 years ago from the military. And as much as I've liked using it over time, it stood for volatility, uncertainty, complexity or chaos, if you will, and ambiguity. I think there's so much more going on with uncertainty that we've tried to define here through Caffeinated. And so I provided a number of different examples and some context why it's a much more jello-like substance, this thing called uncertainty, that has a lot of different roads and avenues than we've probably figured out before. And so that kind of sets the context for the book. And then I introduce a number of the other chapters that follow in terms of why they kind of line up to our super caffeinated world. So that was the intro. From a leadership standpoint, Deb or Louise, do you want to kind of grab the conch in terms of what you talked about in this one?
Over to you, Louise.
Yeah, happy to jump in here. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Gordon. Thanks, everybody. Super exciting. I think that, leaders have always grappled with uncertainty. We've always grappled with change. And if you're leading a business of any size, or even yourself in your own organization, we like certain changes, and others we like to get a handle on. I think the difference now is that we really are at an inflection point in terms of the pace and intensity of change we're all experiencing. So if we just look ahead over the next 10 years, we know that there will be more change across technology, the sciences, the environment, and society. And this is just what we know, never mind all of the surprises that are bound to come along, than there have been in the last 100 years. And that requires a different way of understanding the world, making sense of the world. And this leadership chapter really takes us through a bunch of different lenses, ways of understanding, ways of making sense, some great frameworks, tools, and ultimately, wherever you're sitting in an organization in terms of leadership, being able to dip in and just get a sense of some thinking that might actually help you to understand what you're working with a little bit better. That's exactly what this chapter is designed around. And just to quickly mention the absolutely amazing authors that I've had such fun working with their submissions. We've got Graham Norris on the anticipate. I don't want to read it out for you. I'm sure you can all read it. I've also submitted a piece. We've got Sonia. Gordon isn't actually there, so we need to take him off the slide. Dennis and Deb Dimmoff. And by the time you've got to the end of this chapter, or taken a dive into any part of it, we hope that you walk away, or I'm pretty sure you will, with just a sense of being better equipped for whatever you're actually dealing with at the time. Back to you, Sean.
I love it. Same job, Nathan. You had were entrusted with the big responsibility of trying to make sense of this crazy world called technology. Talk about uncertainty right now.
Well, technology is a huge question, and certainly you could make a 400-page book on most of these topics, and you could probably make a library about change and uncertainty and complexity with regard to technology. There is so much at the front of mind. Things that are changing, that the cool new thing, the scary new thing, depending on how you like to look at it, whatever's in the headlines this week. And we didn't want to do that, because that's the kind of thing that goes out of date really fast. So instead, we have some bigger ideas about how do you think about the things that present themselves as change in technology. Go ahead, Sean. So we've got three pieces. For each piece is a framework. It's a fairly straightforward, simple framework to understand, but it really takes you deeply into how to think about the technologies that may be a big thing. They might be world-changing, but as we've seen, often the things that promise to change the world are always a few years away, year after year after year. We've got world-changing technologies that have been just around the corner for decades now. So this is a thoughtful way for thinking about them, either from the product first or technology first point of view, and really get a handle on what you're looking at. Gordon actually is in this chapter. Hi, Gordon.
Yeah, we moved that one, but
so this is some of the things that have been very high profile for business for a while now. Looking at the transition to cloud computing and the importance now of artificial intelligence in the general context of, they call it digital transformation, which as far as I can tell is basically modernizing in the face of computers. I hope I'm not oversimplifying. And Kieran's piece is kind of a zag. It wasn't quite clear if he wanted to be technology or something else. He originally proposed it for another chapter, but it's the social and governance implications of what hyper-connected communication is doing to our world. The old models of running things as a tribe or a hierarchical organization don't really work. So he digs into that and proposes some models for how to think about it. And that is the technology chapter.
I love it. I had the chance to work with a number of really good people on the marketplace chapter. We gathered together. I mean, you think about a world where record level of inflation, record level interest rates. I just went to my own grocery store the other day, and what used to cost $2.99 in 2019 is now costing $4.99. You've got a whole bunch of different things going on, so I kind of did a reboot on a book that I wrote more than a decade ago called Wiki Brands, and kind of updated it for 2023 narratives and called it Augmented Brands. Asha Singh had an absolute great 9-step kind of piece in terms of just experimentation and kind of the learning by doing and applying it to the marketplace. It's a really strong piece in terms of just practical kind of 9 steps in terms of looking at a situation and applying it to our marketplace. Jackie Dion, who's been a lifelong colleague, had a really good book that she's now abridged into an article for our world called Stuff Happens, It's a Gift. And it's all about creating value from actually experimenting. And it really reads well. And then finally, I've got one in there called the Customer Zeitgeist, and it goes through, we index every 3 years 150 customer macro trends, and so we include 20 of them in there, and also just how you can use that as a business decision maker to actually make sure whatever your innovations or your marketing or whatever makes sense for the future world. So that was marketplace. Scanning, you want to cover this one off, Olga?
Yes, Olga, please.
Yep.
Or
Thank
Bazir?
you. Sorry. So so far that you've heard some of the chapters and the kind of content that is behind those chapters that help you think about uncertainty and how to handle it. And this chapter specifically is really focused on when you're looking out into the horizon and you see things coming at you. This really helps you decide, what do you do about it? And so it is one of the it's almost like the inflection point where you change from uncertainty to now I'm trying to see opportunities. Now I see some opportunities, and what do I do with that? And so what our authors have done for us is they've given us some frameworks to help us figure out how do we do that? How do we take advantage of those opportunities? Gina has given us a really great framework to bring into the organization to help you think about what do I do with this? How do I look at these opportunities in the universe that I live in? Dr. David Kalitz has given us some ideas about what kind of thinking is necessary for those individuals who are making these decisions. What are those qualities that they should have in order to help us to do that? And then Dr. Stephen Litchi has given us a really great example of a situation where individuals who have been traumatized have reduced capability for futures thinking, which is a very important thing to think about nowadays, especially since we've all gone through COVID. There are a whole host of different challenges that are causing a lot of trauma for a lot of people. And so what this article helps us do is to think about how to bring them back so that they can come back to becoming future thinkers. So it's a really great chapter to help you move forward.
I love it. Thanks, Olga. I know sense making. Angie, our editor of the chapter, is actually moving today. I think she has loading vans going straight up to her house today. So, Gordon, you want to maybe pinch hit on just a little bit about what sense making was and is, and for a lot of people, I think it's probably the least known of our chapters, right? Like there's innovation and strategy. Sense making for some people is a great Pandora's box of the unknown. You want to cover this one?
Sure. As you mentioned, Angie's been the leader of this, and we kicked it off with her article that's called "Be Like Water," taking the Bruce Lee idea and applying it to a mind map for how to solve wicked problems through sense making. Very interesting approach, and love to work. You get Auntie on the slide with Angie. She's always got a perspective that it just is it's spot on to something that I struggle with. So come to value her friendship through all this, and this article is an example of that. And then Sonia has the wayfinding complexity, how to navigate uncharted territory through wayfinding, which is straight up one of the best wayfinding articles I've seen. Chuck then has the hunter-gatherer sense making in the super caffeinated digital world, kind of leveraging the super caffeinated idea that Sean introduced with some deeper thoughts on how to apply that to sense making. And then we round out with Sloba's article, and he focused on I think, is this the one I think Paula worked with him on? Is Sloba on? But about he used an example of a menu and making food, if I'm not mistaken. That was that article, and just a brilliant, easy to follow, easy to understand, and then you arrive at a point you didn't think you were ever going to get to. It's completely different than what you thought when you started reading about how to make a pie or whatever. Very crafty. So those are the pieces we had to highlight there. And then just another comment. We were talking graphics earlier, and I failed to mention Angie's contributions there. You see these images that are on each of these chapters. We all worked with Angie to build word clouds that we used and content of each chapter to build these graphics using artificial intelligence. And she led the charge using Midjourney for all that work. This is just another one of those brilliant things that you envision an artist sitting with a pen or a paintbrush in their hand for a year and a half to do something like this. And she was very instrumental in expanding our thinking on this and getting some really high quality graphics. So I want to mention her contribution to that there too.
I love it. Aaron, you want to, you tackled strategy a little bit differently than the rest of us, but no less effectively. In fact, it reads really well. You want to cover off your strategy chapter? You may be muted.
I may be muted. So
You're
like
on.
Sean said, I'm a little different, or we're a little different. My esteemed colleagues, Wendy and Jonathan, I see Jonathan's on the call. Hello, sir. Came together, and initially we had 3 separate articles, and we decided that there was enough synergy to kind of combine them. And we ended up writing one article. And we just thought that was the best for this strategy. And the process was truly humbling and amazing for me personally. And writing with 2 other authors who are much better writers than I really challenged me. And I think we challenged each other, and even how just to think about strategy. And everyone on this call may think of strategy a little bit differently. So, you know, as Sean has outlined here, kind of the key premises of the book, I'm not going to read it off for you, but you know, we do our take on what we believe strategy is and how it's different today and needs to be different today. But I'll just say that really the central argument is that strategy is about adapting to change, not resisting it, and it's about really that resilience, not permanence, and it's understanding when and how to change. And we use a tool that Wendy writes about, business architecture, to really facilitate that change. So it's about business first thinking and cross-organizational collaboration, intentional design, end-to-end systemic perspective. So a lot of key themes with what we're passionate about in the Guild, as well as Cygnus Sprint. So I think this aligns very nicely with some of the work that and the value that we could add to our clients. So the other key thing I don't want to dismiss too is, and Jonathan was really leading this effort too, is really around leadership and enlisting employees into a common vision of how purpose and profit can be combined. And in today's day and age, it doesn't have to be an or, it can be an and really the value of how to get good quality talent into organizations, how they stay with organizations. And it's really that meaningful work and that common mission and being very purposeful. A lot of the stuff that in the books that people are putting in the chat, those are similar common themes. So strategy involves a lot of that continuous improvement mindset around leadership, a lot of nuggets and elements from the other chapters, but I'll just leave it there, Sean.
That's a great contribution. You should well be prideful about that. Strategy is kind of cousin innovation. Deb, you had the hand of Damocles, or the sword of Damocles on this. You want to mention how you approached it?
Sure. And I bet you'd like me to be really lickety split about it too. So I'll do that, Sean. I'll be innovative and quick. Here we go. So actually, let's start, because I'm a big student of the mind. The bad news is when the mind is faced with unpredictability, we can become either paralyzed and wait for things to settle, or we can jump to biases and tried and true patterns, and we miss out on the very best opportunities. So the good news is we can take a new mindset, we can train our mindsets to find opportunities through innovating and hopefully even embrace challenging times. So that was the goal. Small but mighty team. We've got Sean. This whole chapter is about new ideas, new business models, futures design, and innovation techniques, and pragmatic. So that's it. Sean was all about helping us figure out how to pivot to new business models. I was very practical around how do we come up with techniques to innovate for ourselves, for our teams, for our culture, and had a phenomenal piece that's pragmatic about futures design process and frameworks. And our friendly robot did a funny essay on the power of humans and AI together in innovation. So you don't want to miss that piece by ChatGPT, and a limerick. You can have your own rating on how ChatGPT did on a limerick. And then Sean has this phenomenal periodical table to give us all the elements in chemistry for innovation. Great chapter, small but mighty team.
Future prompt engineer for ChatGPT, Deb Dimoff. There you go. I had the joy of working with a number of great, all gentlemen on this one. It's a pretty gender balanced book, but in this chapter, we had 5 men take a crack at discovery. And so I had just a podcast interview with O'Shawn. He's got I thought it looked a ring of familiarity, but I truly have not seen it before. But it felt familiar because it was so good. He's got a tool called AIM in terms of being able to look at something from a number of different standpoints and actually, not necessarily take a polarized view about something. I thought it was really, really strong. Akash is one of my research associates on the Radar Collection, which is another venture of the Guild. And not surprisingly, he has probably the most researched piece of all in our book. I think he's got something like 70 different endnotes. So he really went hard to try to figure out how to use chaos theory and apply it to futures thinking. And so it's a really neat kind of breakthrough, almost on the frontiers of this piece. I'm sure it's going to be not only practical for somebody that's trying to look at new tools, but also something that could be ending up in some kind of thought leadership journal down the road. I'm working on a project, and so it exposes the early stage venture of this project called the Compass and the Compendium. And it's almost a little bit of sense making with a little bit of, wow, if Wikipedia and a systems map had a baby and it looked at how do you approach decisions before you actually get into them, what would it look like? And so that's called the Compass and Compendium. I'll leave it as a teaser. Doyle Buehler invokes Fritz Rader and his balance theory, and how do you apply it to kind of three things around clarity and certainty. And what was the other C? The other C's there, isn't it? I'm bad on my C's today, but so as always, Doyle's article is very visual. It's highly strategic in nature and really exposes some new stuff. And I loved Rick. Rick comes to us from Alberta and has a really deep military background, and he has used this for the last 15, 20 years in his work, and using a jigsaw puzzle in terms of being a metaphor for a real life situation, and how you don't always have all of the different information at your availability. You have to work in teams. And so it's a really good, you can use it just as much as a team builder and a way to collaborate as you can, looking at trying to get at new discoveries. So strong chapter, if I do say so myself. And I'm not too sure who wants to take the anchor chapter, transformation, but Louise, Gordon?
Louise, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Gordon. Yeah, transformation, gosh, we can almost become immune to the words change and transformation. They've been constant companions for all of our working lives. But if we actually think about it, transformation, to be transformed, is to be inextricably changed. And yet we don't often look at what it means to wrap our heads around a journey of change and transformation. So in this chapter, instead of taking a deep dive into the digital once again, what we've done is actually have a look at a much broader perspective to really acknowledge the very human aspects of what it means to go through change, transitions, liminal spaces, transformation. And we start with Bud Taylor, who focuses on organizational transformation, 4 forces to calm uncertainty and what leaders need to know. Really great dive into these 4 forces, definitely worth reading. I'm sure you'll pick up on a whole bunch of different perspectives you hadn't thought of before. Al Camus, The Power of Pull. And when I first read Al's piece, I immediately thought of the future's perspective of putting an anchor into the future and pulling yourself towards it. So it gives a great perspective on how to get there. Alex Brown, how getting it wrong turned out all right. What a great piece from Alex, really looking at how a bunch of people transformed their lives through perhaps an accidental change in a way, and how they went through that process of transformation to turn their businesses into something completely different. And then I take you through a piece around how do we actually, human beings, how do we respond to change, transition and transformation from a very human perspective, really talking about our reactions to those 3 different states, and how if we can actually build in that understanding of human nature into our future projects and engagements, the chances of coming up with a better result are almost guaranteed. If we think about it, most executives, when you ask them about any sort of change or transformation project, will tell you that 70% fail. Whether that's truth or whether it's just a percentage we've all been throwing at something for so long we haven't bothered to explore it more deeply is another question altogether. But why are we so accepting of this rate of failure when it's a constant in our lives? Yeah, and I'll end there. Thanks, Sean.
I love it. And you've invoked Roseanne Cash too. I mean, my Lord, I mean, that is a full-on transformation chapter if I've ever heard one.
That was me, and it's subject to being overridden by Louise.
Oh, I do. Well, vote of one. I have my country guilty pleasure, I suppose. You had the benefit of putting a wrapper on this one and closing out the book, Gordon. Any thoughts in terms of how that went down?
Yeah, I think what I hope folks will find here is they had the wow moment of, look at the compendium of wisdom I just got through, if they read it beginning to end. And if not, they look at the conclusion while flipping through, and then maybe they pick up on the some of the thoughts I had. I just really wanted to share that there are multiple things that are written about uncertainty since 1942, and they are taking very different angles at it than we did. In my opinion, I didn't necessarily state that, but I did share that we wanted to look at uncertainty as something to be embraced and something to be tackled, and how to do it. And that's what our focus was. And I tried to leave folks with the Felix Baumgartner story as just an encouragement. If you guys remember him in the Red Bull jump from space and parachuting to Earth, there was a lot of uncertainty about whether he would spin like a top, re-enter the Earth's atmosphere at Mach 1, breaking the speed of sound, burst into a ball of flame, and that would be it? Or would he actually accomplish the mission of being able to control his spin, entering the atmosphere at the right angle at just enough speed to survive, free fall for 23.5 miles in 5 minutes, and then parachute safely to Earth? That was the goal, and he did. So he had to suspend an awful lot of fear and uncertainty to embrace it, to accomplish the great thing he did. So it was really just an encouragement that if he can do that, what can we do if we would just embrace the uncertainty we face and tackle it with the kind of modern tools that are offered in this book? So that's our encouragement, to try and wrap it up. Then that leads us into the keeping the conversation going with our podcasts and our wild cards. And I don't know, Sean, if you want to pick up with the wild cards there, but everything you're actually spearheading all this with the website, the podcasts, et cetera. I'll just turn back to you to speak to those.
Yeah, just we mentioned wildcards. There's already 8 or 9 people that have authored articles that get referenced in our book, so they do make it into the book, and then they have digital extensions online. And I think the thing for people that are joining us that weren't part of the book, you too can be part of the book as well. It may feel like a salesy type of approach, but I think we've left it open for digital expansion of our uncertainty articles to stuff that we can post online. And so we will have it as part of our roster of articles, whether they fit within our current 9 chapters or not. And as long as they are focused on solutions, please do get in touch with us. I think anybody that got an invite to this message will probably get a few different links. And then we do have a podcast. We're already 10 episodes in the bag already. We'll be launching those in concert with the website launch on Monday. And we plan on hosting upwards to about 50 different episodes this year. And I will clarify, there's about 3 or 4 of us that will be hosting different podcast legs. So it's a really good audio extension to what we do. I could say a lot of different things. I'd probably want to just leave the last 5 or 6 minutes to maybe Aaron chaperoning any of the chat and any of the questions live that people have. The only thing I'd say is we do have 2 documents that really try to get your weight behind what we're doing here. My hope is you've enjoyed hearing what it's all about. We've got a one-size-fits-all form that we have in terms of providing either as testimonials, a book review, maybe your own wildcard article, or if you've got some background in uncertainty, signing up for a podcast interview, and potentially either bridging us to somebody that may be looking for a keynote on uncertainty and all the things we've talked about, or perhaps directly yourself with your companies. We have a roster of people and authors that can more than gamely give those keynotes, given what they've invested in over the last little while. And then finally, we will have a website that's up next week, and we have the first week of a LinkedIn page. We have so much content on this one. Usually people cry about not having content. We have too much, so we've created our own space in LinkedIn to allow you. So please join Cygnus Publishing there. And then it's available March 24th, softcover, e-reader. There are the prices. It's going to be a 6x9 book. It's going to look good, and it's going to be good. I'll get out of this presentation. And Aaron, anything interesting happening in the chat that is worthy of noting?
I think I just filled up any open spaces in my bookshelf. A lot of great book recommendations. a lot of great comments. I don't see a lot of questions. I'm gonna make a comment and then kind of a plug here, since we only have 2 minutes left. But I believe what makes up a good book, kind of in this genre, is a book that challenges your thinking. And reading through a lot of these articles, I think if you really read them slowly and ponder them and think about them, I will guarantee you probably won't agree with every single thing mentioned in every article through the book. And I think that's healthy. I think that expands your thinking, that challenges your thinking. And this isn't a book that is so broad that it's like hard to disagree with anything. I think that would be silly for us to publish such a book. So there's a lot of things that I read in the book that really made me stop, pause, consider, think about, challenge kind of my conventional thinking. So I would just say, as you guys go through this, maybe think of it and approach it from a similar open mind. And this may prompt dialogue with some of the authors, one-on-one dialogue. And I encourage you to reach out to people. And it's a great way to connect you with people that may think a little bit differently than you. And my plug really is, take the time, read it, gift it to colleagues, gift it to people in your network that you think would find it of value. In doing that, send them to the website, send them, a good podcast that you may listen to that may resonate with them. So I think if we can all just organically promote it to the right people that would find it of value, that's the best way to get the word out and for this to spread. And that's naturally going to enhance, like I said before, the brand with the Cygnus Sprints, on-demand consulting arm, as well as the Speakers Bureau, as well as all the other offerings that even the parent Gray Swan Guild can offer.
Some really good book recommendations here. Holy, a well-read audience.
Yeah.
We do have extra marks for anybody that can come up with an author whose last name starts with X. It is the problem with the alphabet. There are not enough X authors out there. And so I may have to dip into Greek history or Chinese history to find one. Any comments that people that are joining us, or people that have been part of the ride, or people that are just joining us that we have in the last minute we have together?
Sean, it's Peter. There is a site called HelloPocketed.io, and you could put your podcasts on there, and you could also become a podcast presenter. HelloPocketed.io. They're out in Vancouver.
I'll have a look. Thanks, Peter. Any other big questions about the book?
Jonathan has a question. How can we access the final content of the book, probably prior to publishing, regardless of the format?
Yeah, I think we batted this one around yesterday. I know there's a 9-page abridged version that is the kind of like, here's the Sermon on the Mount, 20,000 feet above the sky kind of thing. We will try to get PDFs out to the folks in advance of any e-reader friendly type of thing. We won't have that until about the 21st. And then Gordon, what else was part of that conversation? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I think if there are pieces of this that haven't had a chance between you and your chapter editor to see what's going in, we can reach out and work on that individually and say, here's an email with your what's going in print words and graphics. Short of that, I think we need to get it through our pre-publisher to create the images over the next week or so. So as Sean said, it may be as late as the 21st before we can have something that's what's going to actually be published image. So we're in that stage right now.
Yeah, I was asking more about, it doesn't need to be in layout form. There were just a number of these articles as the editors described what's in the book that I'd be interested in putting into, say, a testimonial, because I'm aware of what we wrote. I'm not aware of it. So if that's too complicated, it doesn't need to be in final layout form, but I suspect it may not be that easy to provide it. And if so, that's fine.
I'm glad you mentioned that. We have been working on the testimonial process as well, and I think it's a great idea for us to give you the opportunity to provide testimonials in one form or forum or another, as well as the other authors for each other's work. It's a great idea.
And just a small smidgen of that would have been in the calendar request you would have received today, Jonathan. There's a few links in there. Have a look at some of those. They at least provide some breadcrumbs on the trail. Well, I know we're close to the end of the hour. We're back on again at 7 o'clock Eastern time tonight for the nighttime crew, if you will. I think we all get our dancing shoes on and do a little bit different at 7 o'clock. I just want to thank everybody that joined us today to understand what we're trying to do. Dennis, I love Xenophon. He's my top ex-author so far, so I'm a mosquito attracted to your ex-author here. I did two final things. I want to thank everybody that was part of this book production. You had a choice at some point in time. Do I want to be part of this or not? You knew there was work and sweat equity involved, and you decided to do it anyway. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The Guild, and I think life in general is all about people stepping up and doing stuff. And you have shown great colors in doing that. And I want to give special thanks. He wouldn't do it himself because he's quite Midwest and humble, but Gordon, I want to thank Gordon for leading us and producing this for us. Plenty of times, I'm sure you were looking at us going, why are we having the 8th conversation on something, something, something? And you were patient with us, and you shepherded us with kid gloves, and we've now reached the finish line. So my hope is you feel justifiably proud about your baby.
Sorry, I was muted. I was saying it goes both ways, and it's been a joy to partner with all of you. Really humbling to be a part of it. Thank you.
So we'll send a whole bunch of links after this. My hope is not too consuming for you, but we know that writing the book sometimes is half the battle, and getting it found by the right people is the other half. And so my hope is we'll include you in some of that as well. So thank you all.
Yep.
See you at 7
everyone.
again.
Thanks, everyone.
Beautiful day.
Thank you.